For most of recorded galactic history, Earth didn't matter. It wasn't feared. It wasn't respected. It wasn't even discussed. It was categorized, filed away in a quiet corner of the conquered archives under a classification so insignificant most analysts never bothered to open it. Category E. Primitive. Unstable. Non-threatening. A world of fractured governments, inefficient technologies, and a species that had only just clawed its way into faster-than-light travel, late, clumsy, and embarrassingly loud about it. To the greater galaxy, humanity was background noise. A curiosity at best. A cautionary tale at worst. They're still arguing over resource distribution. One Valeri observer once remarked during a routine scan of Earth's communications grid. Internally divided, technologically inefficient, emotionally volatile. Another replied, without even looking up from his console, then they'll never make it past their own system. The report was filed. No follow-up required. And so, for centuries, no one paid attention. Trade vessels passed through nearby sectors without stopping. Survey drones skimmed the edges of the system and moved on. Even pirate factions, desperate and opportunistic, rarely bothered. There was nothing to take, nothing to fear, nothing to learn. Earth was ignored so completely that even its progress went unnoticed. Slowly, quietly, humanity expanded. First to its moon, then Mars, then the outer colonies. Their ships were crude compared to galactic standards, bulky, inefficient, built more from determination than elegance. Their AI systems were primitive, their weapons outdated, their biology unremarkable. They weren't strong. They weren't fast. They weren't special. At least, that's what everyone believed. Captain Rethvorin of the Outer Monitoring Fleet had spent 9 cycles stationed near the Sol perimeter, and in all that time, Earth had given him exactly one thing: boredom. His assignment was simple: observe minor trade routes, log unauthorized mining attempts in nearby asteroid belts, ensure no fringe species attempted illegal expansion into protected zones. It was the kind of posting given to officers who had no future and no enemies. Anything, his second officer asked one rotation, barely masking a yawn. Reth didn't even bother checking the main display. "It's Earth," he said flatly. "There's never anything." The stars outside his command window drifted in slow silence. No anomalies. No threats. No reason to care. And that was the problem, because while the galaxy had been watching everything else, it had stopped watching humanity. No one noticed how their signals became quieter, more structured, more deliberate. No one questioned why their expansions suddenly slowed, then stopped entirely. No one asked why a species once so desperate to prove itself had gone silent. Not completely, but enough. Enough to disappear from attention. Enough to be forgotten. And in a galaxy where attention meant survival, being forgotten was the most dangerous thing a species could become. Because the truth was, humanity had not stopped progressing. It had simply stopped showing. Hidden beneath oceans no scanner bothered to penetrate, buried beneath ice sheets older than most civilizations, encoded in signals too old for modern systems to recognize. Something was waiting. Not broken. Not abandoned. Waiting. And the galaxy, in all its power and arrogance, had no idea. Because the thing about humans wasn't that they were weak. It wasn't that they were primitive. It wasn't even that they were underestimated. It was something far worse. They had learned how to be ignored. IT began as a fluctuation. So small it almost wasn't recorded. At the outer edge of the Sol monitoring grid, a deep space relay station, old, half-automated, and rarely checked, registered a brief distortion in hyperspace. Not an explosion. Not a jump signature. Not even a transmission. Just a ripple. Then it vanished. The station logged it automatically under background interference and moved on. It would have stayed that way. Ignored. Forgotten. Buried in data no one cared to review. If it hadn't happened again. And again. And again. Within the span of 6 standard hours, the same ripple appeared 12 times across different sectors of the Sol system, each one identical in structure, perfectly spaced, and impossibly precise. That's when someone finally noticed. "Captain, you need to see this." Reth Voren didn't look up immediately. He had heard that tone before, overreaction, usually from inexperienced officers trying to justify their posting. "What is it?" he asked, already bored. His sensor officer hesitated. "I don't know." That got his attention. Reth turned slowly toward the central display. "Explain." The screen shifted. Data streams unfolded across the interface. Waveforms, spatial distortions, quantum echoes layered over one another like overlapping ghosts. At first glance, it looked like noise. But it wasn't random. It was structured. Repeating. Precise. "Is it a signal?" Reth asked. "No, sir," the officer replied. "At least, not one we recognize." "Then what am I looking at?" The officer swallowed. "That's the problem. It doesn't match any known category." Reth stood now, stepping closer to the display. "Run it against the Galactic database." "Already did." And a pause. Then, no matches. Silence settled over the bridge. That didn't happen. Every known phenomenon, every signal, every weapon, every anomaly had some kind of record. Even unknowns had patterns, classifications, probabilities. This had nothing. No origin signature. No energy profile. No technological fingerprint. It was as if the signal existed, outside of known reality. "Play it back," Reth ordered. The system complied. The waveform expanded, translated into an audible range for analysis. At first, there was nothing. Then, a low hum filled the chamber. Not mechanical, not digital. Something deeper, layered, ancient. It vibrated through the hull of the ship, subtle but undeniable, like a distant echo pressing against the edges of perception. One of the junior officers flinched. "Turn it off." Reth raised a hand. "Wait." The hum shifted. Not randomly, deliberately. Patterns began to emerge, frequencies folding into each other, rising and falling in sequences too complex to be natural. "Decode it," Reth said quietly. "We're trying," the officer replied, fingers moving rapidly across the console. "But it's not following any known linguistic or mathematical structure." "That's impossible." "Yes, sir." The hum pulsed again, this time stronger. The lights flickered, not from power failure, but from interference. The signal wasn't just being received. It was interacting. Reth's expression hardened. "Source?" The display zoomed out. Vectors traced backward through space, triangulating the origin point. For a moment, nothing resolved. Then, a single coordinate locked in. Silence. The officer stared at it. "Sir." Reth stepped closer. "Say it." The officer hesitated, as if the words themselves were wrong. "It's coming from Earth." No one spoke. Not immediately. Because that answer made no sense. Earth didn't have this kind of technology. Didn't have this kind of signal. Didn't have anything remotely close to this level of whatever this was. "Run it again," Reth said sharply. The system recalculated. Same result. "Earth. Depth scan," Reth ordered. "Already in progress." The display shifted again, this time slicing through layers of planetary data. Atmosphere. Surface. Crust. Then deeper. Oceans. The signal grew stronger. More defined. More intentional. "Focus there," Reth said. The scan narrowed. Pressure readings spiked. Temperature gradients warped. Sensor feedback began to distort. "That's not possible," another officer muttered. At the deepest point of Earth's southern ocean, far below any known human structure, the data began to break down completely. Not because there was nothing there, but because something was interfering. Something massive. Something hidden. The hum surged again. This time, it wasn't just heard. It was felt. Across the entire ship, systems stuttered. Navigation flickering, shields recalibrating, even the AI momentarily pausing as if trying to understand something it couldn't process. Then, the signal changed. The waveform stabilized, compressed, refined, and for the first time, it responded. A burst of data shot through the system, fast, clean, intentional. The translation matrix tried to catch it. Failed. Tried again. Failed. Then suddenly, One fragment aligned. Just one. A single line, pulled from the chaos. Displayed on the main screen. The entire bridge froze as the words appeared. Not alien. Not unknown. Human. Old but unmistakable. Reth read it slowly, his voice quieter than it had ever been. Signal acknowledged. The hum deepened. And then, after centuries of silence, something beneath Earth woke up. For a long moment no one moved. The words remained on the screen. Signal acknowledged. Not decoded. Not translated. Recognized. Reth Voren felt something unfamiliar crawl up the back of his spine. Not fear. Not yet. But something close. Replay it, he said. The system obeyed. The signal pulsed again, cleaner this time, stronger, as if whatever had sent it was no longer testing but communicating. The waveform no longer looked chaotic. It looked controlled. Deliberate. Alive. Open full spectrum analysis, Reth ordered. Already running. Then why don't I have answers? No one replied. Because there were none. The signal wasn't just unknown. It was wrong. It didn't behave like energy. It didn't behave like data. It didn't behave like anything in the galactic database. It behaved like something that had been built before the database existed. Captain, the sensor officer said, voice tight. The origin point is expanding. Reth turned sharply. Explain. The display zoomed back to Earth. Specifically, its southern ocean. At first, it looked like interference. Distortion in the water column. Pressure anomalies. Thermal spikes. Then the ocean moved. Not naturally. Not with currents. But outward. Like something beneath, it was pushing up. Is that tectonic? Someone asked. No. Another answered immediately. No seismic precursor. No plate activity. This isn't geological. The ocean surface bulged. A perfect circle. Hundreds of kilometers wide. Cloud formations above it twisted unnaturally, dragged into a slow rotation. Gravity readings spiked. Magnetic fields warped. Captain, the navigation officer whispered. We're detecting a localized gravitational well. Reth's eyes narrowed. That's not possible on that scale without. He stopped. Because the ocean split. Not violently. Not explosively. But with terrifying precision. Water parted. Cleanly. As if the planet itself had been instructed to make way. From the darkness below, something rose. At first, it was only a shape. A shadow beneath the surface. Too large to comprehend. The sensor struggled to define it, dimensions fluctuating, mass readings climbing beyond acceptable limits. Size. Reth demanded. The system hesitated. Then, estimating. A pause. Object exceeds standard classification parameters. Reth's voice hardened. Give me a number. Comparable to a small moon, sir. Silence. No one breathed. Because that wasn't a ship. That wasn't a structure. That wasn't anything that should exist hidden beneath a planet classified as primitive. The surface broke. Slowly. Deliberately. Metal emerged. Not corroded. Not damaged. Perfect. Dark as void. Its surface didn't reflect light. It absorbed it, bending illumination around its form like a gravitational lens. Lines etched across its hull glowed faintly, patterns too complex to be decorative, too precise to be random. Ancient, but untouched by time. No decay, the sensor officer whispered. No erosion, it's like it's been preserved perfectly. That's impossible, someone else said. Reth didn't speak. He was staring, because now the scale was clear. The object continued to rise and rise and rise. It didn't end. More structure revealed itself, layer upon layer of armored plating, massive weapon arrays folded into its frame, geometric constructs that didn't align with any known engineering philosophy. This wasn't just large. It was intentional excess. Built to dominate. Built to endure. Built for something far beyond planetary defense. Scan for identification markers, Reth ordered. Running. Seconds passed. Then, none found. No registry codes?
No.
No alien signatures?
No.
Reth's jaw tightened. Then who built it? No one answered. Because they already knew. They just didn't want to say it. The signal pulsed again, stronger. The massive structure responded. Across its surface, sections began to shift. Panels moved, not opening, aligning. Systems activating in sequence, like something waking from a very long sleep. Energy readings spiked instantly, not gradually, not warming up. Full power, contained, controlled, waiting. Captain, the weapons officer shouted. We're detecting active systems, multiple arrays, unknown configurations. Are they targeting us? Reth snapped. A pause.
No.
Then what are they doing? The officer stared at his console, confusion bleeding into his voice. They're calibrating. The ship trembled. Not from impact, from pressure. Space itself seemed to compress slightly, as if reacting to the presence of something that didn't belong within its current understanding of physics. Then, the signal changed again. This time it wasn't broad. It was directed. Straight at them. The translation system engaged automatically. Struggled. Adapted. Then, words formed.
Clear.
Simple. Terrifying. Stand by. No distortion. No error. Perfect translation.
Human.
Reth felt it now. Not uncertainty. Not confusion.
Fear.
Because that wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was an instruction. And it hadn't come from Earth's governments. It hadn't come from any known authority. It had come from that. From the thing rising out of the ocean like a god being remembered. Captain, the sensor officer whispered. Reth didn't look away from the screen. What? The officer swallowed. There's more. The display shifted again. Global scan.
Earth.
Not just the ocean. Not just one location. Multiple points lit up across the planet. Deep beneath ice sheets. Buried under deserts. Hidden beneath mountain ranges. 12 identical signatures. Dormant. Waiting. And now, one had awakened. Reth exhaled slowly, the weight of realization settling in like a collapsing star. They weren't hiding one ship. No one spoke. They didn't need to, because the truth had already landed. Heavy. Unavoidable. Horrifying. Reth finished the sentence, his voice barely above a whisper. They were hiding a fleet, and for the first time in centuries. The galaxy noticed Earth. The alert didn't stay local. It couldn't. Within minutes, Captain Reth Voren's report, flagged first as an anomaly, then escalated to a priority signal, was transmitted across every major relay network connected to the outer systems. At first, it was dismissed. Misinterpretation. Sensor malfunction. Human exaggeration. That was the standard assumption whenever Earth was involved. Until the second transmission arrived. And the third. And the fourth. Different systems. Different observers. Same conclusion. Something had emerged from Earth. Something massive. Something human. Across the galaxy, attention shifted. Slowly at first. Then all at once. In the Valeri Confederation's Central Observation Hub, analysts who had spent decades monitoring high-threat species suddenly found their screens overridden by incoming data streams. What is this? One demanded, scanning the feed. Source. Sol system, another replied. That's impossible. That sector is classified as low interest. Not anymore. Visual confirmation loaded. The ocean split. The structure rose. Silence fell across the room. Enhance resolution. The image sharpened. The scale became undeniable. No one spoke for several seconds. Then, that's not a ship. No, the lead analyst whispered. That's a statement. In the Direl Strategic Command, alarms flared, not because of an attack, but because their predictive systems began failing. Threat models recalculated, then failed again, and again. This is outside simulation parameters, an officer reported. Update the parameters. We can't. Why not? The officer hesitated. Because we don't understand what we're modeling. By the time the emergency session was called, the entire galactic conclave was already in chaos. Dozens of species. Hundreds of representatives. All speaking at once. Accusations. Demands. Fear, thinly disguised as authority. At the center of it all, the chamber's projection displayed a single rotating image. The object rising from Earth's ocean.
Dark. Silent.
Immovable. Order. A voice thundered. Gradually, the noise died down. Elder representatives took control of the chamber. What we are witnessing, one of them began, voice strained despite centuries of composure, is a direct violation of interstellar disclosure protocols. Another slammed a limb against the platform. Violation? This is deception. Humanity concealed military assets of unknown scale beneath a classified world. They were designated primitive, a third shouted. They had no obligation to. They had every obligation, another snapped. Category E species are subject to observation and limitation for a reason. The chamber erupted again.
Fear.
Confusion. Something deeper. Because beneath all the political language was a realization none of them wanted to say out loud. They had been wrong. About humanity. About Earth. About everything. A new voice cut through the chaos.
Calm.
Controlled. Dangerous in its restraint. Enough. Silence returned instantly. Not because of authority. Because of recognition. The speaker was old. Not just in age, but in influence. We are not here to argue classifications. The figure continued. We are here to understand a failure. No one interrupted. Because something like this, the elder gestured toward the projection, does not appear overnight. A pause. Heavy. Measured. This was built. Hidden. Maintained. Another silence. Then, for how long? No one answered. Because the answer was worse than the question. Meanwhile, on Earth,
There was no panic.
no global hysteria. No desperate broadcasts. Just silence. Not absolute, but controlled. Measured. Intentional. News networks reported the event, but with limited information. Governments issued statements, but vague, careful, non-committal. From orbit, it looked wrong. A world confronted with something impossible should have been in chaos. Instead, humanity was watching, waiting, as if this wasn't unexpected, as if this had always been part of the plan. Back aboard Reth Voran's command vessel, the tension had shifted. It was no longer confusion. It was anticipation. The structure had fully emerged now, hovering just above the ocean surface. Not supported, not anchored, simply present. Energy readings had stabilized. Weapon systems remained inactive, but not offline. Ready. Reth stared at the display, jaw tight. Any further signals? Yes, Captain. Play it. The bridge fell silent. The transmission came through instantly.
Clear.
Uninterrupted. No distortion this time. No struggle to translate, because whatever had sent it had adapted. The voice wasn't mechanical. It wasn't alien. It was human, but older,
Heavier.
like it carried weight beyond language. Global systems online. A pause. Then, awaiting command authority. No one spoke, because that sentence didn't belong to a machine. It belonged to a system, a hierarchy, a structure of control. And if it was waiting for command, that meant someone, somewhere, had the authority to give it. In the Galactic Conclave chamber, the transmission arrived seconds later. Every screen, every channel, every system, overwritten. The same message played, over and over. Awaiting command authority. The chamber froze. This wasn't just a reveal anymore. It wasn't just a hidden weapon. It was something worse. Something organized. Something prepared. They built a system, one representative whispered. No. Another replied, voice hollow. They built an army. And then someone asked the question no one wanted to hear. Quiet. Almost afraid. If that's one ship. A long pause. Eyes drifting back to the data. To the 12 dormant signatures. Waiting. Sleeping. What happens when the rest wake up? Back at Earth. The ocean stilled. The sky cleared. The massive structure hovered in absolute silence. Patient. Obedient. Waiting. For someone to answer. The answer didn't come from the ship. It came from silence. Not the absence of sound, but the kind that spreads when everyone realizes they've missed something enormous. On Earth, beneath layers of political control and carefully measured communication, doors began to open. Not publicly. Not loudly.
Quietly.
Secure facilities, some abandoned, others long dismissed as obsolete, received priority access codes that hadn't been used in centuries. Locks disengaged. Archives powered on. Systems older than modern infrastructure flickered back to life. And for the first time in generations, humanity started looking backward. In a sealed chamber beneath the Arctic ice, a vault opened. The air inside hadn't moved in over 500 years. Dust didn't cover the surfaces, because nothing had been left to decay. The room was preserved, waiting. A single holographic console activated at the center, ancient by design, but flawless. A lone technician, pulled from a classified division no one publicly acknowledged, stood frozen as the system initialized. Authorization, the machine asked. The voice wasn't synthetic. It was calm, measured,
human.
The technician hesitated, then entered the code he had been given without explanation. A pause. Then, lineage verified. The room changed. Walls illuminated. Data flooded the air. Star maps. Not current. Not known. Systems appeared that no longer existed on any chart. Trade routes spanning entire sectors. Colonies marked across distant worlds. Structures orbiting dead stars. Human structures. The technician took a step back, breath unsteady. This isn't possible. But it was. Because none of it was new. It was old. Very old. Across the planet, similar scenes unfolded. Hidden bunkers. Buried data cores. Fragments of something larger. Pieces of a truth that had been deliberately broken apart and scattered. Not lost.
Hidden.
Back in orbit, Reth Vorin received a transmission unlike the others. Not from the ship. Not from the Conclave. From Earth itself.
Direct.
Encrypted.
Clean.
He opened it. The image resolved slowly. A human. Older.
Composed.
Wearing nothing that suggested power. No armor. No insignia. Yet carrying something heavier than either.
Authority. You've seen it, the man said.
Reth didn't respond immediately. That depends, he said carefully, on what you think I've seen. A faint smile. Measured. Tired. You've seen the beginning. Reth's eyes narrowed. Then explain the rest. A pause. Then, you classified us as primitive, the human said. That wasn't entirely incorrect. Reth frowned. Then what was it? The man stepped slightly closer to the display. Selective. Silence. Reth felt the weight of that word settle. Selective how? He asked. The human didn't answer immediately. Instead, the feed shifted. The image behind him changed. Stars filled the screen.
Not as they were now.
As they had been. Different alignments. Different structures. And then, movement.
Fleets.
Human fleets. Thousands of ships, moving in formation across systems that no longer appeared on any modern map. Reth's breath slowed. That's not possible, he said. It was, the human replied quietly. What am I looking at? The man held his gaze. Our first expansion. The image changed again. Cities. Massive. Spanning entire planets. Not crude. Not experimental. Perfectly engineered. Orbiting habitats. Ring structures around stars. Energy constructs that bent light and space itself.
Human.
All of it. Reth's voice dropped. You're saying you were? Everywhere. The human finished. Not arrogance. Not pride. Just fact. Then, the image darkened. Fires. Explosions. Entire worlds burning. Not from natural disaster. From war. Ships, human ships, firing on targets across planetary surfaces. Energy weapons tearing through atmospheres. Drones swarming cities. System-wide destruction. Reth's jaw tightened. You started this. The human didn't deny it. We ended it. That answer hit harder. The feed shifted again. This time, aliens. Dozens of species. Different forms. Different technologies. Gathered. Not in conflict. In agreement. Reth's eyes narrowed. What is that? The human's voice lowered. The moment everything changed. The scene unfolded. Secret meetings. Covert alliances. shared intelligence. Fear, visible even across species that processed emotion differently. They didn't trust us, the humans said. Not after what we became. Reth watched as data streams appeared, strategic plans, infiltration protocols, coordinated strikes. You're saying the galaxy united against you? No, the human corrected softly. They erased us. The images accelerated. Wormhole networks collapsing. Navigation systems failing. AI cores turning against their own fleets. Colonies going dark. Entire civilizations disappearing. Not destroyed. Removed. Reth felt something shift inside him. This wasn't war. This was something else. Why didn't you fight back? He asked. The human finally looked away from the display. We did. A pause. Then, we just didn't win. Silence stretched between them. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Because the implications were unavoidable. If this was true, then humanity wasn't a new species rising. It was an old one returning. Reth spoke carefully. And the ships. The human looked back at him. They were never meant for conquest. Then what are they? A long pause. Longer than before. As if the answer carried more weight than anything said so far. Insurance. Reth's eyes narrowed. Against what? The human held his gaze. Being forgotten. The transmission flickered. Not from interference. From time. It was ending. One more question, Reth said quickly. The human waited. If all of this is true, Reth hesitated. Then asked the only thing that mattered. Why now? The human's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Something colder. Older. They remembered us, he said. Reth felt it again. That slow, creeping realization. Who did? The human didn't answer immediately. Then, the same ones who tried to erase us the first time. The feed cut. Back on the bridge, no one spoke. Because the story wasn't complete. Not even close. It had only just become clear enough to understand one thing. This wasn't a discovery. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't even a return. It was a continuation of something that had never truly ended. Below them, the massive structure remained still. Waiting. Watching. Not just a weapon. Not just a machine. A memory. And memories had a way of coming back. The silence didn't last. It never does. Not when something ancient decides it's done waiting. Above Earth's southern ocean, the massive structure remained perfectly still. No weapons fired. No movement. No aggression. And somehow, that made it worse. Because every sensor reading said the same thing. It wasn't idle. It was active. On Reth Voran's bridge, the atmosphere had shifted from observation to anticipation. Energy levels? He asked. Stable, the officer replied. But rising in micro-increments. Charging? No, sir. A pause. It's not building power. It's organizing it. Reth frowned. Clarify. The officer hesitated. It's like the system isn't waking up randomly. It's following a sequence. Below them, the surface of the structure changed. Subtle at first. Lines across its hull, previously faint, began to glow with a deeper intensity. Not brighter, but clearer, as if layers of something hidden were aligning into place. Patterns emerged. Not decorative. Functional. Geometric pathways of energy flowing across the ship's surface in perfect synchronization. Captain, another officer whispered. Those aren't power lines. Then what are they? They're circuits. The realization hit instantly. This wasn't just a ship. It was a system. A network.
And it was coming online.
Without warning, the signal surged. Not outward. Inward. Every sensor array, every communication channel, every data system aboard Reth's vessel lit up at once. Multiple intrusions, the tech officer shouted. It's accessing? No. It's interfacing with our systems. Block it. We can't. It's not forcing entry. It's being allowed. That's not possible. It is now. The main display went dark. Not broken. Overwritten. The crew froze as new data replaced their own.
Clean.
Structured.
Perfect.
No glitches. No errors. Whatever this system was, It didn't hack. It integrated. A single line appeared. Centered. Unmistakable. Primary system initialization. The words weren't translated. They didn't need to be. Every system on the ship understood them. Shut it down. Reth ordered. No response. Disconnect all external feeds. Already done. It's not external anymore. Reth's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? The officer turned slowly. It's inside the system. The lights dimmed. Not from failure. From control. The ship itself felt different. Quieter. Heavier. As if something larger than its own design had taken notice of it. Then, the voice returned. Not through speakers. Through everything. The walls. The consoles. The air itself seemed to carry it.
Calm. Deep.
Human. But not modern. Not familiar. Something older. Something that remembered more than it should. Primary directive active. No distortion. No delay. Perfect clarity. The crew didn't move. They didn't breathe. Because that wasn't just a system message. It was awareness. Reth stepped forward. Identify yourself. A pause. Not long. Just enough to feel intentional. Designation irrelevant. Reth's jaw tightened. Then state your function. Silence. Then, I remember. The words hit harder than any threat. Across the structure below, entire sections began to shift. Massive segments of armor rotated. Weapon arrays unfolded. Not aggressively, but deliberately, like limbs stretching after a long sleep. Sensors recalibrated. Targeting systems aligned. Not toward Earth. Not toward Reth's ship. Upward. Into space. Captain, the weapons officer shouted. It's deploying full systems. Target lock. Reth snapped. Negative. Then what is it doing? The officer stared at the feed. Scanning. But it wasn't scanning randomly. It was scanning everything. Deep space. Orbital positions. Fleet signatures. Energy distributions across multiple systems. Not like a weapon preparing to fire. Like a commander preparing to assess. Back on Earth, every major network experienced the same thing. No panic. No crash. Just override. Screens changed. Devices paused. Signals synchronized. Across the entire planet, a single message appeared. No translation required. No ambiguity. Command authority required. In Geneva, inside a secured chamber beneath layers of reinforced infrastructure, human leadership watched the message in silence. No shouting. No confusion. Just tension. Because this wasn't unexpected. One of the council members spoke first. It's earlier than projected. Another nodded slowly, but within tolerance. A third leaned forward. Are we ready? No one answered immediately, because readiness wasn't the question. Control was back in orbit. Reth felt it. That shift. From unknown to understood. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to realize something critical. This system wasn't malfunctioning. It wasn't rogue. It wasn't confused. It was waiting. For orders. Captain, the sensor officer said quietly. Reth didn't look away from the display.
What?
The officer swallowed. It's not just this ship anymore. The global scan appeared again.
Earth.
All 12 signatures. Previously dormant.
Now.
Responding. Not active. Not fully. But no longer silent. Each one emitting the same low-frequency signal. Connected. Synchronized. Reth exhaled slowly. They're linking. Yes, sir. To what?
A pause.
Then, all of them. The voice returned. Softer this time. Closer. As if it had moved. As if it were no longer speaking to the ship, but to him. Awaiting primary contact. Reth didn't respond. He couldn't. Because the implication was unavoidable. This wasn't a broadcast. It was a selection. On Earth. In that silent chamber. A single name appeared on the central display. Not announced. Not explained. Just chosen. And for the first time since the system awakened, humanity didn't hesitate. Because whatever had just come online wasn't just a weapon. It wasn't just a memory. It was something far more dangerous. something the galaxy had feared once before, and clearly hadn't forgotten. The name appeared without explanation. No title, no rank, no justification. Just a single line on the central display, Dr. Noor al-Sharif. For a moment, no one in the chamber spoke. Not because they didn't recognize the name, but because they did. Thousands of kilometers away, far from any capital, far from any center of power, in a quiet settlement on the outskirts of Cairo, Dr. Noor al-Sharif was exactly where she always was, alone, surrounded by fragments of history no one else believed mattered. Her workspace was cluttered, but not chaotic. Every artifact had a place. Every symbol had a meaning. Walls lined with half-deciphered inscriptions, reconstructed glyph systems, linguistic trees stretching across centuries of human evolution. Most of it dismissed by mainstream academia. Too speculative. Too inconsistent. Too old. They're not errors, she had argued once, years ago, standing in front of a panel that barely concealed its disinterest. They're remnants. Of what? One of them had asked. She hadn't hesitated. Of something we've forgotten.
They had laughed.
Politely. Professionally. And then they had ignored her.
Now,
she stood at her desk, staring at a fragment of carved stone under a scanning lens. The symbols etched into it weren't like any known human language. Too structured to be random. Too inconsistent to be standardized. But they repeated. Patterns within patterns. Meaning buried under time. She reached out, tracing one of the lines with her finger. I know you mean something, she whispered. The power cut. Not violently. Not suddenly. Just gone. The room fell into silence. Then, her equipment powered back on. Not through the grid. Not through backup. Through something else. The screens flickered. Realigned. Overwritten. Her breath slowed. Because she didn't need to guess. She felt it. That same pattern she had been chasing her entire life. Now staring back at her.
Alive.
The display changed. Coordinates. Secure transmission. Authorization granted. A single line followed. Primary lineage confirmed. Noor didn't move.
Didn't speak.
Because something inside her, something she had never been able to explain, responded. Outside, the sky changed. Not visibly. Not dramatically. But something was there now. Hovering. Watching. Waiting. The transport arrived without announcement. No sound. No warning. Just a shadow settling over the sand. The door opened. Two figures stepped out. Military. But not conventional. No insignias. No identifiers. Just presence. We need you to come with us, one of them said. Noor tilted her head slightly. For what? A brief pause. Then, you already know.
She didn't argue. Didn't hesitate.
Because, deep down, she had been waiting for this her entire life. She just hadn't known what this was. Until now. The journey was fast. Too fast. The craft moved like it wasn't bound by the same rules as everything else she understood. No turbulence. No sound. Just motion. Controlled. Effortless. As if the distance itself didn't matter. When they broke through the cloud layer above the Pacific, she saw it, and for the first time, she stopped breathing. The warship hovered above the ocean like something that didn't belong to the present. Not futuristic. Not alien. Older. Heavier. Like it had been built when the rules of reality were different. Its surface swallowed light. Its edges didn't align perfectly with space, as if they existed slightly out of phase. And those patterns, the same ones she had spent years studying, they were everywhere.
Alive.
Flowing across its hull like veins. That's, she whispered. No one answered. Because there was nothing to say. The platform beneath it extended. Not mechanically. Not with visible movement. It simply unfolded.
A path.
An invitation. When her feet touched the surface, she felt it. Not physically. Something deeper. Recognition. Inside. The air was different. Warmer. But not in temperature. In presence. The walls weren't static. They pulsed. Faintly. Like a heartbeat. The symbols she had studied for years flickered across every surface, not carved, not projected, embedded, grown into the structure itself. She reached out, touching one. It responded, not with light, with memory. A flicker of something, too fast to see, too deep to understand, passed through her mind. She pulled her hand back. "This isn't just a ship," she said quietly. "No," a voice replied. She turned. There was no one there. No figure. No machine. Just space. And yet, the voice was clear. Close. Familiar in a way she couldn't explain. Primary lineage detected. Her heart skipped. Dr. Nur al-Sharif. A pause. Then, command authority verified. She swallowed. "I'm not," she started. The voice interrupted. "You are now." The chamber ahead opened.
Silently.
At its center, a structure hovered. Crystalline. Geometric. Impossible. It rotated slowly, suspended in midair, emitting a soft, steady hum that resonated not in her ears, but in her thoughts. "What is that?" she whispered. The voice answered without hesitation. "Memory." She stepped closer.
Carefully.
Each movement echoed through the space, not as sound, but as response. The ship was aware of her. Every step, every breath. "Do you wish to proceed?" the voice asked. She hesitated. Not from fear, from understanding. Because whatever this was, it wasn't just information. It was truth. And truth had weight. Outside, across orbit, every system detected the same shift. Energy levels rising. Not unstable. Not aggressive. But focused. Directed inward. Back on Reth's ship, the sensors spiked. "Captain." Reth turned sharply. "What now?" The officer stared at the readings. "It's not waiting anymore." Inside the chamber, Nur took one final step forward. Her hand hovered over the core. The hum deepened. The entire structure responded. "Do you wish to remember?" the voice asked. She closed her eyes. Just for a second. Then, yes. The moment her hand touched the core, reality broke. There was no transition. No fade. No sense of movement. One moment, Dr. Nur al-Sharif stood inside the chamber. The next, she was somewhere else. Not physically, but completely. The ship disappeared. The ocean vanished. The present dissolved. She stood beneath a sky that didn't exist anymore. Stars burned brighter here, closer, sharper, arranged in patterns no modern chart had ever recorded. And below them, a city. Not a city. A civilization. Structures stretched beyond the horizon, towers of impossible height, flowing with light that wasn't artificial, but controlled. Bridges of energy arced between platforms suspended in the air. Entire districts floated, orbiting one another in perfect synchronization. Ships moved silently overhead. Not bulky, not mechanical, elegant, alive in their design.
Human.
Nur's breath caught. "This is us." The voice answered, not from outside, from everywhere. "This is who you were." The scene shifted, not gradually, instantly. She stood on a different world, another human colony, larger, stronger, more advanced. Massive orbital rings encircled the planet, channeling energy across its surface. Fleets hovered above the atmosphere, thousands of ships, each one larger than anything humanity currently possessed. This wasn't expansion. This was dominance. "We built all of this," she whispered. "Yes." The voice didn't celebrate it, didn't admire it. It simply stated it. Then, the sky burned. Ships turned. Weapons activated. Energy lanced across orbit. Explosions tore through fleets. Not alien ships. Human ships. Nor flinched. What? The scene fractured again. Another system. Another battle. This time, aliens. Different species. Different technologies. Cities under siege. Planets cracking under sustained bombardment. Human fleets overwhelming everything in their path. No hesitation. No restraint. Her voice shook. "We did this." A pause. Then, yes. No defense. No excuse. Just truth. The images accelerated. War after war.
System after system.
Humanity expanding not as explorers, but as conquerors. Entire species vanished. Not always destroyed. Sometimes absorbed. Sometimes enslaved. Sometimes erased. Noor stumbled back. This isn't right. This isn't who we are. The voice didn't argue. It didn't comfort. It simply continued. The vision changed again. A chamber.
Dark. Hidden.
Not human. Not entirely. Dozens of alien figures gathered.
Silent.
Watching projections of human fleets moving across the galaxy. Their movements weren't chaotic. They were precise, predictable, efficient, unstoppable. They were afraid, Noor whispered. Yes. One of the figures spoke, its voice distorted, layered, translated imperfectly through the memory. They will not stop. Another. They cannot be allowed to continue. Another. Direct war will fail. Silence. Then, we remove them. Noor felt it. That shift. That moment where everything changes. How? She asked. The vision answered. Data streams.
Codes.
Infiltration. Not attacks. Not invasions. Something quieter. Viruses. Not biological. Not digital. Something in between. Designed to target the one thing humanity relied on more than anything else. Their systems. Their networks. Their memory. They didn't destroy us, Noor whispered.
No.
The images became chaotic. Not from battle. From collapse. Wormhole networks destabilizing. Navigation systems failing mid-transit. Ships disappearing between jumps. AI cores turning. Not malfunctioning. Redirected. Colonies went silent. Not attacked. Disconnected. Entire systems lost. Human fleets turned on each other. Not by choice. By corruption. By manipulation. By something buried too deep to detect in time. We were dismantled, Noor said, her voice hollow. Yes. The vision slowed. The last days. A dying network. A collapsing civilization. Fragments of leadership trying to hold something together that was already gone. And then, a decision. Not to fight. Not to rebuild. Not immediately.
To hide.
The scene shifted one final time.
Earth. Not as it was now. Different.
Quieter. Less developed. 12 massive structures descending into the planet. Oceans parting. Ice cracking. Mountains opening. The warships. They buried them, Noor whispered. They preserved them. Why? The answer came slowly. Heavier than anything before. Because memory was the only thing left. The final image formed. A command. Encoded deep into the systems of the 12 warships. Not written. Embedded. A directive. If civilization falls, preserve memory. Protect origin. Await return. Noor felt her chest tighten. Return. The voice softened. Not in emotion. In weight. You are the return. The vision shattered. She fell back into her body. Back into the chamber. Back into the present.
Gasping.
Shaking.
Alive.
Tears streamed down her face. Not from pain. From understanding. We weren't just victims, she whispered. Silence. Then,
no.
She looked up at the glowing core. Her voice broke. We were the reason they were afraid. A pause. Then, yes. Outside, the warship pulsed. Energy surged across its entire structure. Not violently. Not aggressively. But with purpose. Back in orbit. Reth Voran stared at the readings. What just happened? No one answered. Because the signal had changed. It was no longer searching. No longer waiting. It had found what it needed. Inside the chamber. Noor stood slowly. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes still human. But different now. Heavier. Deeper. I understand, she said quietly. The voice responded. Then choose. Her gaze didn't waver. Between what? The answer came, without hesitation. Between what you were and what you will become. Outside. Across Earth. Across orbit. Across the watching galaxy. The silence returned. But this time, It wasn't empty. It was waiting. The silence broke with violence. Not from Earth. From orbit. It happened so fast most systems didn't register it as an attack, only as a loss. Across Earth's orbital grid, satellites blinked out. Not destroyed. Disconnected. Signals cut cleanly, as if erased mid-transmission. Contact loss across upper network. A systems operator shouted inside Pacific Defense Command. General Elena Hart didn't flinch. How many? 70% and climbing.
How?
The answer came seconds later. External intrusion. Viral payload. Unknown origin. In orbit, Reth Voron's sensors lit up. Multiple microsignatures detected. Stealth vectors. Origin. Conquered fleet. Reth's eyes narrowed. They moved first. Deep within the shadows of Earth's orbital perimeter, a cloaked cruiser revealed itself just long enough to launch. No declaration. No warning. Just intent. A compact warhead streaked forward, silent, invisible to most systems, spreading a cascading disruption field across Earth's network grid.
A test. A probe.
A signal. Back in the galactic conclave, chaos erupted again. That was not sanctioned, one delegate shouted. It was necessary, another replied coldly. We needed to know if the systems were active. You risked escalation. No, the voice snapped. We confirmed it. On Earth. There was still no panic. No retaliation. Just response. Inside the warship, Dr. Noor al-Sharif stood motionless, eyes fixed on the core. She felt it before she saw it. A shift. A decision point. They've started, she said quietly. The voice answered.
Calm. Certain.
Yes. What do we do? A pause. Not hesitation. Calculation. We respond. Outside, the massive warship moved. For the first time since its awakening. Not fast. Not aggressively. Just slightly. And that was enough. Reth felt it immediately. Movement detected. Vector? The officer stared at the screen. Not toward us. Then where? The display rotated. Zoomed outward. Tracked the warship's alignment. It was pointing at the stars. At the hidden positions of the observing fleets. At the ones who thought they were unseen. Captain, the weapons officer whispered. It's targeting external positions. Reth's voice dropped. All of them. A beat. Yes. Across the warship's surface, massive sections unfolded. Not violently. Gracefully. Weapon systems revealed themselves. Vast, layered, beyond anything in known arsenals. Triple-barrel plasma arrays. Gravitational emitters. Energy constructs that didn't match any cataloged weapon class. And yet, none of them fired. They're not engaging, the officer said, confused. Ref leaned forward. Then what are they doing? The answer came not in action, but in control. A pulse. Not visible. Not explosive. But undeniable. Across orbit, the cloaked cruiser froze. Its engine shut down. Not damaged.
Stopped.
Inside the vessel, systems went dark. Controls unresponsive. Weapons offline. Crew suspended in a sudden, unnatural stillness, as if time itself had been interrupted. On Reth's screen, the cruiser hung motionless in space. Untouched. Unbroken. Completely powerless. What did they just do? Someone whispered. No one had an answer. Because no weapon behaved like that. No system had that level of precision. The warship moved again.
Slightly.
The cruiser drifted.
Gently.
As if guided. Then, released. Its systems flickered back online. Engines sputtered. Control returned. The ship didn't attack again. It didn't even hold position. It retreated. Immediately. Back in the conclave chamber. Silence. Total. Absolute. They could have destroyed it. One voice said quietly. Another answered. They chose not to. And that was worse. On Earth, the message arrived seconds later. Not through channels. Not through networks.
Direct.
Every screen. Every system. Every device. A single line. This was your warning. No anger. No threat. No escalation. Just fact. Inside the warship, Noor stood still. Watching. feeling the weight of it.
They didn't fire, she said. No.
They wanted to.
A pause. No.
She frowned. Then why show that level of power? The answer came quietly. To remind them. In orbit. Reth exhaled slowly. They're not fighting, he said. No, sir. They're demonstrating. His gaze hardened. And that's far more dangerous. Because now the galaxy understood something it hadn't before. Humanity didn't need to win a war. They just needed to prove they already could. Below, the remaining 11 signatures pulsed faintly. No longer dormant. No longer silent. Waiting. For the next move, the galaxy didn't attack again. Not immediately. Not because it had chosen peace. But because for the first time in recorded history, it didn't know what would happen if it didn't. Above Earth, the warship remained in position.
Silent.
Unmoving. But no longer ignored. Across every major system, fleets held at distance. Weapons charged but not fired. Commanders waited for orders that never came. Because no one wanted to be the one who made the next mistake. On Earth, things began to change. Not loudly. Not violently. But fundamentally. The remaining 11 signatures awakened. Not with spectacle. Not with explosions. But with inevitability. Across the planet, ice sheets cracked open in perfect geometric patterns. Deserts shifted as buried structures rose without disturbing a grain of sand. Mountain ranges parted just enough to reveal what had always been hidden beneath. 12 warships. Not one. Not a secret. A system. They rose slowly. Deliberately. Hovering across Earth's atmosphere like sentinels from another age. Different shapes. Different structures. But all carrying the same presence. Ancient. Unyielding. Aware. For the first time, humanity looked up at its own past. And understood. It had never truly been gone. Inside the central chamber, Dr. Nur al-Sharif stood before the core. But something had changed. Not in her body. In her presence. The fear was gone. Not replaced by arrogance. But by clarity.
They're waiting, she said.
Yes. The voice was quieter now. Not weaker. Closer. For what? A pause. For your decision. She looked at the projections. The galaxy. The fleets. The tension. They think we're going to finish what we started. Silence.
Then,
will you? The question hung in the air.
Heavy. Real.
For a moment, she didn't answer. Instead, she remembered. The cities. The war. The collapse. The fear. The betrayal.
And the truth.
We were powerful, she said slowly. Yes. We were feared. Yes. We were dangerous. A pause. Then, yes. She closed her eyes. Just for a second. Then, opened them. But we were also wrong.
Silence.
Then, yes. The word didn't argue. Didn't resist. It accepted. That was the difference. Noor stepped forward. Closer to the core. We don't rebuild that. The chamber responded. Not with sound. With alignment. The warships above Earth shifted formation. Not outward. Not aggressive. Protective. Encircling the planet. A shield. Not a weapon. Across orbit. Sensors lit up. Energy surge. Reth's officer shouted. Defensive configuration. Another corrected. Reth stared at the display. They're not preparing to attack. No, sir. They're preparing to protect. That realization hit harder than anything before. Because it changed everything. Back in the conclave, confusion spread. They're not advancing. They're not retreating. What are they doing? No one had an answer. Because no one had ever seen power used like this. Not dominance. Not conquest.
Control.
On Earth, a transmission began. Not forced. Not broadcast through networks.
Projected.
Across space. Across systems. Across every listening point in the galaxy.
Clear.
Uninterrupted. Noor's voice. We are human. Silence followed. Total. You tried to erase us. No anger. No accusation. Just truth. You succeeded. That shook them. Because it wasn't denial. It was acknowledgement. But we remembered. The warships pulsed.
Softly.
In unison. We remember what we built. A pause. We remember what we destroyed. Another. And we remember why you were afraid. Across the galaxy, no one spoke. Because they were listening. Really listening. For a long time, we thought power was enough. Her voice didn't rise. Didn't harden. We were wrong. The statement echoed. And for that, we paid the price. Reth stood still. Not as a soldier. Not as an observer. As someone witnessing something history would never forget. Noor continued. We will not rebuild what we were. The warships shifted again. Not threatening. Aligning. We will build something new. Across distant systems, sensors detected something else. Not weapons.
Construction.
Deep within the warships, systems activated that hadn't been touched in over 100,000 years. Fabrication engines. Energy matrices. Structural frameworks. Not for war. For creation. We offer a choice, Noor said. The words carried weight. Those who fear us may stand against us. No hesitation. We will defend ourselves.
Calm.
Absolute. But those who seek something more. A pause. Come. The transmission spread. Learn. Across systems. Ships paused. Build with us. Confusion. Hope.
Fear.
All at once. Because we are not returning to conquer the galaxy. The final line came softer. But stronger than anything before. We are returning to remember it. The transmission ended. Silence followed. Not empty.
Full.
Because something had changed. Not just for humanity. For everything. In orbit, Reth exhaled slowly. They didn't just win, he said. No, sir. They changed the rules. Below, the warships held position. Not as invaders. As guardians. And for the first time, the galaxy didn't see humanity as a threat. It saw them as something far more dangerous. A civilization that had learned from its past. And chosen to become something better.